You know, this review work, it's got me just super busy. You know, I want to watch, there's so many movies I want to watch this year. I'm pretty sure I'll get to watch Guardians of the Galaxy. I mean, my mom really wants me to take her for Mother's Day. So I'll probably get to see that. But, you know, there's Spider-Man Homecoming coming out. I don't know if I'll get a chance to see that. I just got so much stuff going on with that. You know, I would kind of like to see Thor Ragnarok. But, you know, maybe I could live without that one. Wonder Woman, whatever. I'm sorry, guys. Zack Snyder just feels like he's got his fingerprints all over that one. So I'd have to see like really good reviews before I'd want to see that one. Star Wars. You know, Star Wars Episode 8. I would have to see that. But what if I don't have time? I may not be able to get to it. I don't know. Just been so busy. Sometimes I wonder, why do I do what I do? Okay, we are continuing our Ryzen reviews with AMD's Ryzen 5 series. We're going to review the 1600X and the 1500X. And so AMD did a really great job of offering an awesome lineup of options. We looked at all their 8-core options the first time, and we saw some really impressive things from that. So now we're going to get to see a 6-core 12-thread option from AMD and a 4-core 8-thread chip. So, you know, if you're a consumer and you are looking for a processor, I feel like AMD is just opening up the market in such a great way. But as always, we've got to see how these guys perform and go through all the paces to really make a judgment call on that. Once again, guys, I want to take a shout out to Epic Gear and thank them for sponsoring my channel. You know, of course, huge fan of their products. Really love the Defiant mechanical keyboard. Recently reviewed the Morpha X. The Morpha X is just by far my favorite gaming mouse that I've used. And I get it, that is a subjective taste thing. You know, you can't always just expect your taste to go out to everybody. But hey, it's a great modular mouse. Gives you optical and laser sensors, and it all comes with it. So check those out. I'll have links in the description below. Once again, thanking Epic Gear. Let's go ahead, move on to the rest of this review. Now, this is going to be just strictly a performance review. We're going to look at CPU benchmarks in gaming. I have both of the Wraith coolers. Those reviews are going to be coming, and we are going to do a full knockdown, drag out overclocking review where we're going to compare motherboards and just trying to get max frequencies on every individual chip. But those are going to be two totally separate reviews. So we're going to focus entirely on performance this time. Let's go ahead, get right into it. All right, I know I said that I was just going to do testing, but I forgot. I did want to do a quick, closer look of the motherboard AMD sent. Now, I'm not going to use this for the testing in this case because biggest reason is I am testing Crossfire. And so in this board, this is a B350 chipset, not the X370. The difference between one of the big difference, there's a few, but the big one that I want to point out is that the B350 does not support multi-GPU. It's only meant to handle one at a time. And the reason for this is that if you plan to never use Crossfire SLI, then you can just grab a board that's going to be way more cost efficient, but still have all the other good features that the X370 has. And that's really great in some ways. But there's something that I've noticed with a lot of B350 boards, and that's this. Even though they're going to support overclocking, look at that VRM. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But a lot of these X370s are going to have anywhere from like 10 or 11 or something along those lines. A lot more VRMs than these B350s are. So the B350s may not overclock as well as the X370s if they don't have the VRMs to support it. So just something to keep an eye on if you're really wanting to do some heavy duty overclocking but are thinking, well, I don't know. I have seen one B350 board that does have a good VRM to it, but is still just a B350 chipset, and it's MSI. MSI has one, and I forget what the actual board was called, but I think it was one of their carbons. And if you look, you will see it has an actual like higher end VRM, but the B350 chipset. So MSI is the one, and that's so far the only company I've seen that gets it, that you can still put some actual overclocking support on a board that has a B350. So, and it's also cheaper. It is cheaper than a lot of the X370s. So that is awesome. So guys, remember when I told you that I did not feel like we were seeing the full Ryzen yet? I really feel like my CPU benchmarks are starting to, well, kind of back up that theory a little bit. But at the end of my Ryzen 7 review, I said, I don't think we're seeing the whole thing. And the more that I did the testing on Ryzen 5, the more I thought that that was true. Now, as always, I'm going to keep overlaying these benchmarks here so you guys can take a look at those. You can pause the video. I also have my written review at pureoverclock.com, link in the description below. So you can go there, see those graphs as well, right up there, up close and personal. But yeah, so a lot of our results were very expected. You know, we've got a 6-core and a 4-core. So of course we should see less performance on overall scores, but we should see some single thread scores either being roughly the same or slightly less depending on our frequencies. And we saw that. Things like PC Mark, things like Cinebench, very much exactly what we would expect. You know, when I got into PC Mark, the work and creative benchmarks, it's funny how close those scores are, and they don't vary. I mean, we do see a little more leaning towards multi-thread favoritism with you know, the creative side of that, but the work is very single thread. So of course we just see the stronger single thread performance getting the higher scores. So, you know, a lot of that was very expected. There was 2 benchmarks that really caught my attention. First off was Kraken. Now, if we aren't seeing the full Ryzen, and if there's going to be some software changes, Windows upgrades and things are going to start really taking advantage of that architecture, then I feel like we would probably see our first improvements in a web browser, and that's exactly what happened. With Kraken, it's all about timing and delays, so the lower your score, the better your performance. And we saw the Ryzen 5 1600X almost matching now, like really closing the gap with Intel 7700K. That is super impressive. That is something that Firefox, we saw both of these Ryzen 5s beating our Ryzen 7. Are Ryzen 5s faster than Ryzen 7s? Not in any of our other benchmarks, but has Firefox been upgrading their browser? Yes, regularly. So I think that's the thing, is there's some architectural things going on here that are just different. And then you go to something like WinRare. WinRare, we saw very expected results with the different Ryzen 5 processors versus the Ryzen 7 with 8 cores versus 6 cores versus 4 cores. But then you go to an i7, which is just a 4-core 8-thread processor, and just when you think that this benchmark is entirely relying on multi-threading, bam! The i7 is barely edging out even an 8-core 16-thread processor. I think, guys, we are in a whole new era of CPU benchmarking. I think we're going to actually see software favoritism. We're going to see some programs that are going to very much benefit like Intel architecture, and that's not just on a single versus multi-thread level. I mean literally the architecture. We're going to see some software that's going to really benefit from Ryzen architecture. I'm going to get a little more into that in the conclusion, but I think when we see that with WinRare, we're seeing something very unique and different that is a whole new era of computing. Let's go ahead, move over to the gaming benchmarks. So guys, I think the big deal about Ryzen 5 is that gaming is where it's at. Gaming is what these guys are really going to be geared for. You know, the 8-core processors, definitely looking at more of a enthusiast professional workstation type level. So when we get to these Ryzen 5s, we're looking more at just average use or even gaming use. And so how do they do? Well, you know how I like to do things. I try to split up my games into titles rather than trying to just do some crazy amount of, I'm going to find every title I have. I try to say, hey, let me find a title that kind of represents a general genre of games and then use it as a representative title to kind of give us a broad spectrum. So of course, the first title I like to use is Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's a great DirectX 11 and DirectX 12 title that also likes to favor NVIDIA GPUs, so that tends to be different than titles that favor AMD GPUs. And in the case of the Ryzen 5, we saw just really on par performance with our Ryzen 7 and even the Intel 7700K. Now, I did reuse my Crossfire setup because I love to see how Crossfire does, and both chips handled Crossfire well. It wasn't until we got down to 4 cores and 4 threads on the 1500X that we started seeing a little bit of lagging behind, but even the 1500X was very capable, keeping up in both benchmarks. But there might have been a little bit of edge to Ryzen 5. There's a couple of really low dips that I saw that this guy seemed to shorten. So I was like, huh, that's interesting. Deus Ex Mankind Divided started confirming that. In the DirectX 11 benchmark that I ran, you can see that the 1600X is kind of just outpacing my 1800X. How does it do that with 2 less cores? Well, I think what we have is AMD's balanced power plan is actually working out and is benefiting some gaming performance. You see, when I did my all my Ryzen 7 reviews, I had to use the high performance mode in Windows, but AMD released their own power plan, the AMD balanced plan, and that guy seemed to do a really good job of actually boosting that performance a little bit. It also seemed to smooth it out. We didn't have quite as much jaggedness in our curve. Of course, when we go to our DirectX 12 benchmark, everything is just neck and neck tie. And I tell you what, guys, that's the beauty of these new APIs. Just seeing this really smooth movement in frame rates, that's what we need. It's just consistent frame rates and smooth, not these super choppy up and down drops and highs. So DirectX 12, I think, is a real deal. I think Vulkan's a real deal. I'm really excited about the new APIs. Now, when I moved over to World of Warcraft, that game really surprised me because it just looked like my 1600X was really benefiting. Even the 1500X looked like they were outpacing the 1800X. And I think that all lands on that AMD power plan. So I did do like a head-to-head where I used a 1600X and I did just a straight 2 runs, one with high performance, one with AMD. And it still looks like it favors AMDs, but it maybe wasn't quite as dramatic. And I think there's so much going on here, guys, where we've just got drivers and updates and things moving. And of course, Windows 10 Creative Update came out, and that thing got installed. I didn't have any massive problems. I did have a little problem with Crossfire with the latest 17.4 driver, but I was able to roll it back to 17.3, which should have put it basically where I was with my Ryzen 7 stuff. So I can't imagine that it was all driver, but there could be some things going on with Windows that's starting to improve. So yeah, seeing that was impressive. I don't think we're seeing the full Ryzen still. I think it's going to be still several months before things really start picking up. And you know, don't get me wrong, we're not going to see 20-30% performance increases in things across the board. A lot of our performances may be just 5% increases here and there. But I think that Ryzen is a new architecture, and it's going to take a little bit for software to catch on and use it a little bit better. So yeah, excellent on gaming. I mean, gaming-wise, these are doing great. Let's go ahead, let's wrap up this review, and let's talk about what I really think this Ryzen means. So before I wrap up this review, I want to talk a little bit more about some of these things I was mentioning in the testing stages about how we are not seeing the full Ryzen yet. Guys, think about this. When is the last time we've really seen a true, complete, and total fresh architectural design in processors? If you go back and really look for something that from the ground up is like its own thing, you gotta go back to Bulldozer. And that was back in 2011. If you look at the core series of Intel, you remember we are on, with Kaby Lake, that's the 7th generation. Now I get it, there's been a lot of performance increases, and I know that the architecture has changed, but it's not like an complete fresh overhaul from the ground up. Now maybe that doesn't make a huge difference, but the first generation of Core was back in 2007. So when you think about it, it has been years since we've had a completely fresh ground up architecture that is just completely new. And so now I get that. Maybe that's a little bit different or some things change. I don't have an engineer's understanding of architecture, but based on just my practical view of things, Ryzen is something that's completely new. And the idea that it's going to take a little bit for software and OSs and things to really catch up to what's going on in the architecture doesn't seem like that far of a stretch. Now, to sit there and say though that there's some kind of hidden 50% of extra performance increase and watch out guys, Windows is going to do an update and Ryzen's going to be the greatest performing processor ever. No, I think that's completely impractical. But guys, I don't think it is any stretch at all to say that there could be even 5 or even 10% in performance increases over the next year with Ryzen in single thread, in multi-thread. So I think we see some programs that are already utilizing it very well. You're probably not going to see any change. But I think we're going to see the environment grow stronger and stronger with Ryzen as time goes by, because this is new. This hasn't happened before. We haven't had a fresh architectural design. I think the other thing we're going to see is we're going to see the Intel AMD landscape look very much like the AMD NVIDIA one does. In other words, we're going to see some very much Intel flavored programs and very much AMD flavored programs. I have a feeling based off of what I was seeing with WinRare that that's going to become more commonplace than it ever used to be with processors. We're used to that with graphics cards. Yeah, here's this game that definitely favors AMD cards. Here's this game that definitely favors NVIDIA. That's been the norm. You know, most of the time processors was multi versus single thread. I think that's going to change a little bit. So let's go to the price now. Here's the deal. Ryzen 5 1500X, we got a quad core 8-thread processor that is $190. It is within spitting distance of the i7 7700K, and even though it's not going to perform as well, is it really worth that much extra money? I don't think so. I have a hard time saying, yeah, you should spend $350 on a chip when you can get something for $190 that's going to perform pretty darn close to the same. But guys, honestly, the all-star here is just the 1600X. Oh my gosh, that is just an amazing chip because it's going to do some really good work on work and professional stuff, but it's going to do a great job on gaming. They've got the same processor frequencies as the Ryzen 7 1800X, and for the average user out there, this is the processor that's going to do everything. Now, normally you'd say jack of all trades, master of none, and I guess to some extent that's true. But the reality is that the majority of us who use computers, we don't use our computers for one very, very specific thing. Yeah, even those of us who are gamers might still do a little streaming or video editing or web design or something on the side, and we have to have our processor do more than one thing. Even our games need to do more than one thing within different titles. And the 1600X is a processor that, in my opinion, just does it all. It is a great performer for whatever you're going to need it. It may not be the best performer in certain areas, but it's still going to take some best performance crowns with it. And at $250? Really? This is the gamer chip I have dreamed of owning right here. And I love this 1600X. It is fantastic. So as you guys would expect, Ryzen 5 is going to get a clear Pure Overclock Editor's Choice Award. But the 1600X, there's no way I can get around it. Hardware hound must have. You should just be buying this chip. This is your gamer chip and workstation chip. It's the chip that's going to really get you a ton of mileage. And I tell you what, guys, I really am convinced the gaming market is going to get stronger and stronger in multi-threading so that this chip is going to hold out a lot longer than something that has less cores and less threads. So, hey, take my opinions for what they're worth, but I do have some benchmarks and some other things that you can really go off of. So, yeah, that's my review, guys. I really hope you enjoy it. I know there's some things that I didn't cover with the wraiths and stuff, but like I said, there's going to be 2 more reviews coming. We're going to do a review totally dedicated to AMD's new redesigned wraith coolers. Then I'm going to do another review entirely geared towards overclocking. So yeah, like this video if you like it, subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with all the new stuff that I'm going to be doing in reviews, and I will catch you later. Hey guys, this is the Hardware Hound, and I've got just kind of a little bit of a personal message to you guys, just to, you know, just to give you a little bit of an update. So, good news, I am going to be moving pretty soon, but the bad news is I might be off the grid for a little bit. I'm not really sure what my video schedule is going to be during this move. I'm actually closing on a new house and going to be moving, and so I'm going to have to take everything over. So I'll have like a new studio, but it'll pretty much just be this desk. I think there won't be a window in the new spot where I have it, so it'll change a little bit, but not much. But no, just so you guys know, this isn't my YouTube is taking off so well. It's nothing like that. Me and my wife, a while back, decided to look into foster, and we were gonna look into foster adopt for like a smaller child, and we ended up with a little bit older than we expected. We had an 8 and 11-year-old at the time. And so even though that's all worked out really well, our house got really small really quick, so we had to start looking to get some extra room. You know, I actually have another job and other things that I do, so that's how I keep afloat while I'm doing review stuff in between and stuff. So I might be off the grid for a bit because it's going to be busy. But I did want to put in a plug while I was at it. Reason why I gave you guys more detail is if you're out there, you're watching this video, guys, it doesn't take somebody who's super rich or super talented or has everything together to look into foster care, to look into adoption. Guys, there's a lot of kids out there, they just need a good home. And if you're just willing to be patient and just to give some love, you can really help out in that area. So I just want to put in a plug. I've been kind of wanting to do this for a long time, and I'm going to do it now. Just think about it. Hey, if you're somebody, you got a job, and you can help out, just consider it. You might be able to really help some kids get a good family, really set them straight down the road. So yeah, there's my status update real quick, just to let you know. So if I disappear for a while, it's not because I'm giving up. I'm just, you know, got a lot of stuff going on. So hope that keeps you guys informed, and well, I'll say it again. I'll catch you later.